Hi, this is Mike's Pipes. We're going to put true dual exhaust on this 2017 Chevy pickup, 6.0 liter. GM from 14 to 20 had a 3-cat setup on it. And what that means is there's a catalytic converter on the left side, catalytic converter on the right, and then they threw in this big catalytic converter here in the rear. So it's a 3-cat setup. It comes in the front like 2 3/4 dual in, and then it wires together through the cat, comes back here, 2-bolt flange for a stock system. On the stock system, this is 3.5 inch, next down to 3 inch on the inlet of the muffler. Goes inside this muffler and swoop, all the way down to about 2 1/4 maybe. I'm gonna cut this muffler apart so at the end we will show you exactly what we're doing to increase the performance and mileage. So once we get rid of all this back pressure, the mileage is gonna come to the point where when you run down the highway, because we got rid of all the back pressure, you don't have to push the throttle as hard, and that's where you pick up on the mileage. These 6.0 liters, they're not fuel sippers by any means. Most of these trucks, you can pick up 1, 2, maybe 3 on a good day. After it goes in this muffler, pressures up this big garbage can, comes back out, 3.5 inch all the way back out the tail. Well, we're gonna put true duals on. So on this gentleman's pickup, he wants one behind each tire. We offer the kit behind tire or under bumper, or go straight out the back. But this gentleman wants one behind each tire, so we'll have one out each side. He wants to keep it nice and quiet. He's gonna tow, so we're gonna use Dynamax Super Turbos. The reason we're gonna split it here and put a pulse chamber in it is because this head pipe's so much longer on the left than the right-hand side. If we were just to cut it loose, put a big 3.5 inch system on it or 4 inch system on it, you pick up that in-cab resonation. About 1700 RPM, you get that wah, 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 wah. And that's just due to the fact that the pulses on the one side is so much longer compared to the pulses on the other. And then we'll do our 2.5 inch dual. But if you looked up at the manifolds on these trucks, they only come out 2.5 inch. You can't see it because this truck has been previously tested, but it comes out 2.5 inch, goes in here, then it jumps up 2 3/4 on the outlet. So we're gonna just duplicate the 2.5 inch and keep the mid-range and keep the pull. And the bigger you go with exhaust, the less torque you have on the bottom, and the more you put on the top. So we're gonna keep this thing, have good mid-range. We want our exhaust system to work between that 2,000 to 3,000 RPM range where it runs at going down the highway. But it'll give it a lot more pull. So let me get started here cutting. On this GM truck, here's the factory 2-bolt flange. I'm gonna cut it just ahead of that. These bolts break, they leak. They had a high failure rate I've seen through my shop. So I'm gonna just cut it so we can slip our pulse chamber. It'll slide right inside and give us a nice weld joint. So I'm gonna cut it off for us. I cut off the factory flange ahead of it. Our pulse chamber slides inside. Got it nice and level with the chassis. I got it parallel with the frame rail because I want to make sure my pipe. I slipped the head pipe up into the pulse chamber. It's flared. This is 2.5 inch. We're gonna look on our instruction. 33.5 inches from the pipe to the rear end housing using a standard 14 inch case mufflers. Standard 14 inch case, single offset. So offset inlet, center outlet. We're gonna get this first dimension, then we're gonna show you the second dimension. So from our rear end housing to our head pipe is 33.5. So we're gonna cut it off right here. We provide long head pipes for everything, for long bed, short bed. That way you can cut a little bit off. I'm gonna drop it down and we're gonna get our, you know what grandma says, it's easier to cut it off than to weld it on. So we got our first head pipe set in there. Like I said from our instructions, the 33.5, I'm gonna verify we're right on the money. Now, this is just a standard 14 inch single offset. Any single offset inlet, center out. So we're gonna pop this up on our muffler, or on our head pipe. We're gonna level our muffler, and then we're gonna verify. We're gonna verify from the rear end housing to the case of the muffler, 19.5. And we are golden. Now that sets our position for our tailpipes. If you set them at those numbers, and I made it from the rear end housing to the case, because it's hard to miss diagonally or whatever. We wanna go nice and straight. So we're 19.5. And then we'll just duplicate it again. We already know the length of our head pipe. We'll set it side by side. After our 19.5, we knew our length, so I cut the second head pipe, set the second muffler parallel with each other, and then I weld them together on the end of the cases, on the inlet and the outlet. And that way it sets the links. We already set it off of here, so we got the length for our other tailpipe, and they're all parallel. Got it all nice straight in the chassis. Run the offset down. So now we're ready to put a tailpipe on. We always start with the passenger side first. I slid the right-hand tailpipe. You always mount the right-hand side first. And then this gentleman wants big black tips on it, so I'm going to take and slide it over. Set it about where I want it. Mark it. I'm going to cut it off so there's not a bunch of excess pipe hanging inside the tip. So I'm going to reinstall this right-hand tailpipe. I'm going to mark it a little bit so I see how far it goes in the muffler. I want to make sure I go in with enough depth. Now we're going to set our tip. I already got a marker kind of where I liked it before. In the kit comes 7/16 rod stock hangers, fits all the factory holes. This slip back into the OEM hangers on the right hand side, and we're going to add a hanger on the left hand side. But once I get the first tailpipe set where I like to get it hung. Installing the left rear, we put the axle pipe in first, and then the tailpipe comes up, and they make a union here. And this is where you take a little time and make sure you match side A to side B. I might have to trim a little amount to make sure you have plenty of shocks clearance. Check your bump stop clearance, make sure you have plenty of clearance. And then we take a couple wire ties. We got 2 brake lines in the breather holes. We just wire tie them together so they don't be bouncing around. And the factory doesn't provide us a hangover here. Stock. I call this an 07 hanger. We're going to simply drill and bolt it to the chassis. We'll cut it off here a little bit, weld it here, and then we're going to put an 09 update on it. That's where you just bolt it. And then this is what I call an 09 update. What it does is puts it on a double shear so it doesn't break. We're going to take and add one to the passenger side also so they look the same, you know. But what that does is wherever you start and stop your weld, it's going to break. So if we put this on a double shear, it'll never break the hanger. We've completed our Chevy 6.0 liter and welded everything, painted all the joints, offset down, sets it up for a single offset inlet, center out, tailpipes, passenger side slips in 1 piece, driver side 2 piece. You got to set the axle pipe, and then we always take and slip them together, get a little spot on, and make sure they're exactly the same. That side's like falling off the wall. But get everything set, make sure we have all of our clearance, make sure we have lots of bump stop. All the pieces come in the kit. 7/16 rod stock hangers for the right hand side go right back in the factory. On this, we put it right here on the case. Back up through the factory hangers all the way to the front. And that's old muddy old girl. Now, let's go look at the factory muffler. I took the plasma cutter, cut it apart. This is the factory muffler off the 6.0 Chevy we just did. You can tell by all the mud on it. No smoke and mirrors. But it comes in 3.5 inch. This was the inlet. 3.5, neck down to 3. Goes in this big tube through the first baffle, the second baffle, the third baffle. When it gets down to the first chamber, it ends up being 2.25-ish plus. So it pressures up. This is the transfer tube. This is less than 2 inches. Transfers it all the way back through the case and muffler. Pressures up. Probably whistles through these holes. Goes down to the bottom. Straight through the tailpipe, which was 3.5 inch. And this is the outlet. You can tell by the 2 big hangers here. This was up in the chassis, held up by the rear end. So that poor old 6.0 liter ended up whistling its guts through a 2-inch tube. By compressing all the pulses, compacting them so it doesn't make any cab resonation. The problem with that is when you step on the gas, it's real torquey and then it goes flat. It has no pull in the middle. So by relieving all the back pressure of the factory exhaust or the factory muffler, we have better throttle response, better mid-range pull, and goes all the way to the end of the pulls all the way to the end of the red line where it upshifts. So in order to keep rid of the in-cab resonation, we had to split it, put true duals on it, and we did it in 2.5 inch. I have a rule of thumb. Anything up to 6.0 liter, we put 2.25 inch duals. Anything 6.0 liter and larger, we go 2.5 inch. 3-inch duals would kill this thing like a slug. It moves so much, moves the torque curve up, 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 kills all the bottom end, the mid-range. There isn't a truck on the planet can pull 3-inch duals. Tried it, 96 in my 454 truck. But anyway, so that's why we size them the way we do. Engine size, we want to keep some mid-range pull. We put true duals on so it doesn't have any in-cab resonation, and the trick is doing the big pulse chamber and balancing all the factory exhaust pulses that come up through the factory Y pipe.